Yeah.
Very good.
Hello and welcome to our webinar exploring what organizational digital competency means in shipping. So my name is Carl Jeffrey from Digital Shipping London, and our speakers today are David Levy from Orbit MI in Boston, Giampiero Soncini from Oceanly in La Spezia, Italy, and Dimitri Liras from Ulysses Systems and Paralos Maritime in Athens should be joining us. So we're talking today about organizational digital competency, so differentiate that with individual competency. So there's lots of people who've been working in shipping IT for decades, so it'd be nonsense to say you're not competent as individuals. But when we talk about organizational competency, that means an organization that makes the best possible use of digital technology to achieve its goals. And I think it's fair to say no shipping company is doing that so far. So there should be something useful in this webinar for everybody. So we can all think of organizations which do have high levels of digital competency. So personally, I would count my bank or my supermarket chain and Amazon, but maritime industry has a lot of complexities and unpredictability that these industries don't have. And so we're going to tackle what organizational competency means initially from three angles. So one angle is the way that we choose which digital products to purchase, how we find out how well they meet our needs before committing to pay for them. So David Levy from Orbit MI is going to share ideas on this. Then our second angle is the budgets we allocate to software. So we've got to find good business reasons to our management to justify more spending. So you might be skeptical about hearing someone from a software company say we should spend more money on software, but the opposite definitely isn't going to work. When companies are paying so little for software, there's no money to pay for software development. So that's something we've seen in shipping. So Giampiero Soncini is going to tackle this. And our third angle is whether your software investments are future-proof. The Silicon Valley business model is all about selling products to use today, and anything 5 years old is considered obsolete, but that doesn't work in shipping when we probably want to continue using the same software for decades. Our software needs to be adaptable so we can integrate easily with other systems in the future and develop it for new requirements we might have in the future. So Dimitri Liras of Paralos Maritime and Ulysses Systems is going to tackle this. So we're going to have three short talks from David, Giampiero, and then Dimitri. Then we'll move to discussion and take questions from the audience. You can put questions in the Q&A box at any time. You can see everybody else's questions. You can upvote them if you like them, and we'll take questions at the end. And I'd like to invite David to start his talk.
Thank you very much, Carl. Before we start, as a lifelong fan of the New York Yankees and the New York Knicks and the New York Giants and other New York teams, I want to make sure people know that I am not from Boston. Okay, I'm not from Boston. I actually live in Connecticut, but I'm as they say, I'm a New Yorker. No matter. Thanks, Carl. It's great to be on the panel. Thanks for asking me to join. One of the hardest things about selecting software is dealing with the noise in the marketplace. And we've seen the Sky Sale Advisors charts or Kongsberg's charts, and there's all the little logos on them, right? And everything's in different categories and not quite sure. We're still trying to figure out where people play and who the vendors are and who a vendor is, which vendors are sustainable, which vendors are going to be here next year, whether they've taken 10, 20, 40, $50 million. We've seen that that's not necessarily a guarantee of a long-term enterprise. But the software market is fragmented because shipping is fragmented. Shipping is fragmented. There's thousands of companies, right? And Giampiero said, and I wrote this down, there are only 171 companies in the world that own 50 or more ships. But yet there's, depending on how you count them, 100,000 vessels. So there's lots and lots of different companies out there. And so the software market reflects that fragmentation. And we should not be fooled into thinking that there's one company out there that's got the solution for everyone's problems, right? It's just not going to happen. It's unrealistic to think that someone has got a solution for every problem that a commercial shipping organization has. And so, in the context of how do you make a choice of which vendors to work with, there's a couple things I would say, and I'm sure Giampaolo and Dimitris are going to reflect on this as well. Is you have to look internally first, right? You have to understand what business challenges you are trying to solve at some base level, and then identify which areas could be addressed by technology and software, for instance. Obviously, there's things around carbon emissions and CII and EU ETS, and we all want to grab the data to help us with reporting and compliance. But even before that, there's issues of efficiency at your organization. Right? Do you have too many people doing too many unproductive things? Do you have an issue related to transparency, where we've got data in a lot of different places, but we can't see it, or we can't get it off of our vessels, right? Do you have issues with compliance? Do you have issues with just employee productivity? These are general business issues that any company in the world has to deal with. And start there, right? Start there. And from that point of view, then you reflect and you use that as a lens, so to speak, to look at the software market and the solutions out there and say, who are the companies that can help us with these particular challenges? Okay, great. Everyone does that, or I hope everyone does that. The reason I suggest that is because while you are doing this kind of analysis and making sure you understand your business challenges and figuring out what your business goals might be, you're getting calls, emails, LinkedIn, you're getting all kinds of solicitations from vendors on those little charts who are trying to call you, and they want meetings with you, and they want to do demos with you, and they want your attention. And it's really difficult to be a ship owner, ship manager, pool manager, and have to field all of these queries, especially because most of the stories sound the same. Most of the stories sound the same because at some level, we're all trying to help you generate more profits or reduce your carbon emissions or whatever it is. And so the challenge there is to look at the companies and decide which ones fit your business model, also the way you like to work. Okay, ultimately, there's a workflow issue here that needs to connect with how your teams work. Software companies that are demanding that your teams change the way they do their business, you're going to have a pretty strong return on investment story there to tell a shipping company, you have to do things completely differently because we've got a neat software package. And so that becomes an important, I think, filter as well, which is, how is this going to impact my organization? How is it going to impact my organization? And then almost at the end is when you start to worry about price, right? Price is something that everyone's got their price and they can usually be negotiated, and everyone's got their ROI story, right? You give me $5, I'm going to give you back $100, whatever those things are. But it's this workflow issue which is really, really important. And there's the last piece I'll say here is again, this is all great, right? But how do you find out? And that is where the idea of doing a demo or a pilot or a trial comes in. Some people use these things interchangeably, but how can we actually start to use your product so we can determine if it fits our workflow and if it fits our business challenges and if it meets the goals that we're trying to achieve? And that's a key point in time when you work with different companies, because some companies will charge you money to do trials. It could be what they think is a nominal fee. It could be something pretty significant. To me, that's would be a yellow flag, Orbit, we happen to never charge for a pilot. We believe that we have to show value before our customers work with us and adopt our software. But I think there's at that moment when you're talking to a software vendor and they ask you to pay for a pilot, I'm not saying don't do it, but that should be a moment in your due diligence process where you really drill down into what that means. Why am I paying for a pilot? You're doing custom programming? Okay, that makes sense. There's a value associated with that. What else am I going to get from that investment, right? And what happens if it doesn't work? Do I get that investment back? Is this a one-time fee? Again, it's a moment in that engagement where if you haven't at that point really asked the detailed questions about how the software is going to impact my team, my workflow, results, that's the point to do it. And that is where your decision making will really come to kind of a sharp point. So if I could summarize really quickly, it starts with this internal discussion about your business challenges, and then you have an engagement with the software vendors, and then as you move further down the line, you want to trial their software, and then whether it's a paid trial or a free trial, that's when you need to really drill down onto what the expectations are for them, your team, and what the results are. And if you follow that, I think you'll be in really good shape. The last thing I'll say here, because I want to give obviously Gianpaolo and Dimitris time to talk, is from our point of view, from Orbit MI point of view, if you're not the right fit for us and we can't help you, I want to wish you luck. I want to recommend to you other companies that might be able to help us. We have a great value proposition. We can help a lot of people, but there's a lot of companies that we can't. And instead of my trying to convince you of something that I know not to be true, which is a waste of my time and a waste of your time, I'd rather just say, here's what we can do. This isn't a fit. Let me introduce you to my friend Gianpaolo or Dimitris, because they've got great products here. So in any case, I hope that was helpful in advancing the discussion, Carl.
Yeah, very good. So more collaborative, more partnership, less transactional, and a lot of due diligence and care about what you are looking for. So now we'll go to Gianpiero in La Spezia, who's going to give us another perspective. So Gianpiero. Well.
The perspective is similar from a point of view that everything that David said, I totally agree. Where though there is a limitation is the reality of the world, of the maritime world. I've been saying this for so many years that I simply don't understand where people live. Probably I'm the only one on Earth and the other lives on some other planets. There are today, well, they've grown a little bit. There are today 108,000 ships in the world. About 60,000 of them are oceanic ships that may need any type of software on board. The other are too small or too coastal and therefore not interesting. 60,000 ships managed by roughly 2,000, 2,500 shipping companies located in 43 countries, roughly. Okay, I've never been to Angola or Mozambique to sell to the shipping companies there. I go like everybody else to China, I go to Malaysia, to Singapore, of course, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and of course, every single European country. When you do the math, you come out that you have a potential, let's say 40 customers per each country, and you have to divide it with 150 competitors. So for all people like me who have been in this business all my life, I'm 70, I will retire at the end of this year. And I just don't understand people, because when I started with Spectec in 1986, the market was different. It was only us and another two companies. And now every single person in the planet who does not wakes up in the morning and say, what am I going to do in the future? I'm going to build software for shipping. And it doesn't work that way. Another thing that I find absolutely amazing is how companies that come out and say, oh, we can do it ourselves. classification society, shipyards, grocery stores, supermarket chains. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry think that they can build a good software in shipping. And I've been saying for the last 35 years, it's much easier to build a ship than to build the software for the ships. Much easier. Because when you build the ship, you build an LNG carrier. When you build the ship, you build a tanker, you build a bulk carrier, you build a tug, you build a supply vessel. But when you build the software for shipping, you have to try to build it for every single ship, for every single ship owner, in every single country, speaking every single possible language in this planet. So what happens is that all of a sudden you find out that your plan to build the software, oh, I have 500,000 euros, oh, I'm going to build the software and become a zillionaire, Jeff Bezos, move aside, I'm going to be the next one, basically goes belly up. But still, you get people trying, and nobody learns from the lessons of the past. Nobody tries to see, hey, but what happened? How come that company is not there anymore? What happened? Why? Why companies have been able to survive for 30 years and some others have not even been able to survive for 30 months? It doesn't matter. Nobody studies, nobody analyzes. We all talk, we all say, we have to learn from the past, but nobody does it. So my passion for the next 10 years will be to write a book about my 35 years of writing or selling software in shipping, and nobody will read it anyway because it doesn't really matter. But that is essentially what I see the world today. It's too fragmented, is enormously fragmented. So I can understand if a buyer is confused, because I got this question in Dubai last year. One person asked me, how do you know which company to buy from if you have 150 startups all saying that they produce the same software? And I say, well, get one and try it, but don't pay anything, I hate the free trials, but I am forced to do it because I have to prove that my software works. And I understand the buyer that says, well, you're saying that you do A, B, and C, but I have this one who says the same, this one who says the same. And they just started 6 months ago, and I started 8 years ago to develop performance. So how does it tally? And I wasn't by myself, 20 plus people.
Dimitri, you got some background noise.
There's somebody singing. That's good.
It's a ship.
It's a ship. Okay, anyway, so that is my thinking. I don't understand why it is happening again. It happened again in 2000 with the e-business company. 143 companies started between 1998 and 2000. And by 2003, there was only one surviving. 142 were dead. I think the shipping community lost about a couple of billions at that time. And this year is going to happen the same. Before, when I was talking with David and Carl, Dimitris, before you came in, I discussed the fact that we had a company, Nautilus Lab. They came in, they advertised themselves as the future of shipping. They said, we're gonna sell it to everybody in the planet. We have the support of Microsoft for $14 million or 24 maybe, 24. And after 5 years ago, they disappear after having burned 58.5 millions. And nobody in the industry asked, why did it happen? Not even newspapers, by the way, Carl, not even journalists went out and say, hey, but why? Where did the money go? I didn't get it, which pisses me off. If they could have given it to me, I would have given the company with the product already made, done and finished and beautiful and polished up. So shipping is a weird industry because we all think that we can do things ourselves better. I hear David when he says we should congregate instead of disintegrate. But this is how the industry has been acting for the last 35 years. I haven't seen any change at all. And now, actually, even more than before, in addition to the shipping companies, to the classification society, to the shipyards, to everybody who has ever played with a dinghy, coming on board and say, I'm going to build the next best software. We now even have the bloody financial entities. They can give me all the money in the planet. I have already the product. And like me, at least another 10 good companies have the product. We don't need the other 145. So now the only mode is the one of resilience. of resisting. You know, I have enough customers to keep me going, and so my competitors, some of them much bigger than myself, and we basically wait for all for the market to cull and kill all the newcomers, and slowly we're going to pick up. And finally, the last thing is that one thing has never changed in shipping, and this is another thing that people don't study or don't see enough. Companies don't want to pay for software. Shipping companies don't want to pay for software, full stop. I have no idea why, I really don't, but it's gotten worse instead of getting better. So when I hear companies investing over a period of 3 or 4 years, 60 million. There is another company on the market, a UK company, which as of April last year, they want to build the software of the century for the whole market, everything, demurrage, ports, everything. April last year, they published the results. They had lost 63 million pounds. I think that the three of us, we would very happily sell our companies for a fraction of that amount and just go and enjoy fishing. That's it for me, Carl.
Oh, very good. So I'd like the audience to leave with a clear idea of what organizational competency means. But these two points come together, that the more care you put into choosing software, the less likely you are to buy something cheap and useless, I guess. So hopefully Dimitri's will add on or build on the understanding of what good software purchasing means. So I'll pass over to Dimitri. Cheers. You're on mute still.
Well, thanks very much. I agree with both of you, Gianpiero and David, and we're scratching the surface here of what the real problem is. I think the core point that Gianpiero made is that people don't understand why things fail. So it's like saying I'm going to buy and design a ship, but I don't know why the last one sunk. So it's not a great approach to software. And most companies do understand why their ships didn't function, and they usually buy or order better ships or buy better ships or whatever they do. The important part here is that we're dealing with a domain, which is building software, which is not as simple as Gianpiero pointed that out. It's not as simple as most people think it is. There's a lot of things that could make you fail and make your project fail. A lot of things that make people think that they can introduce a new company that doesn't have any experience and so on, and that suddenly, if they push enough money, 63 million pounds, they'll get something good. There are many reasons why those things don't happen. They can't be covered in 10 minutes. I can't tell you in 10 minutes. You know, I could tell you, I could write. Have written 40 or some of the things. A lot of things contribute to this. First of all, Silicon Valley doesn't give us the tools to build the software that they purport to build, nor do they bring out products that help us build software. But we still think, and the IT industry still thinks that they are the people that provide the tools for building everything. Yes, they provide tools for building something that they can sell, not something that we can sell. So the tools that are provided by Silicon Valley are aimed at Silicon Valley business models. I'll give you two business models. One is a purchasing system, procurement. Lots of companies build purchasing systems. Can they suddenly be applied to shipping? None have succeeded. The only ones that have succeeded are the ones that were built for shipping. Now, is that because shipping is so different? No, it isn't that. It's that the model for building software that you buy from a famous company that sells to 100,000 other companies, that model doesn't work in shipping, which is the model that you're going to take a platform, use it, which is 40% of what you need, build another 60% on top, and then you'll require improvements every year. That company you bought the original from is not going to change their 40% to let you improve the rest. They're going to go in a direction that's shared between 100,000 companies they sell to. If you buy an Oracle purchasing, you're sharing that model with 100,000 companies or 50,000 or whatever it is. the point here is that the model that you're starting with, that the IT industry thinks is okay, isn't okay. You can't buy a platform in shipping and modify it and keep up with, and that platform keep up with shipping and the other platform and the other industries that it was designed for. So the model is wrong. Even if you buy from a shipping dedicated company, you're still thinking that that's the model you can follow. The second problem with models is that the software industry has rightfully taken on things like fixing the post office software system in England, which didn't turn out to be so good. If you ask me why it didn't turn out to be so good, I could tell you that requirements analysis for building something in 3 or 4 years, or even in 5 from scratch, isn't a good method. And it's never going to be built, it's not going to satisfy anybody. Why is that? Because people in their minds do a lot more work than people think they do. People think they fill out forms and everything's hunky-dory, and then they design the workflows and they think those workflows are hunky-dory. They don't know that there's an entity that's 100 times more intelligent than any of the software put together that's thinking what to put in the form. And if that's not taken into consideration, a lot of those forms are going to have junk in them. So the concept of requirements analysis that people think that they can do is 10 times harder than it is. So if I was a company that was going to start in 2 years or 3 or 4, produce a complete software system for the shipping domain, I would be out of luck. It's not going to work. I'm not going to know what's needed exactly. I'm not going to know the nuances. I'm not going to take into consideration how smart people are and how many gaps they fill. And I'm going to wear them down. They're going to look at the software and they say, this is more work. Now, ship owners, who we mentioned quite a bit, have many things that also make the problem worse. First of all, they buy things when those things are in oversupply. So they figure that if I wait long enough, I'll buy a ship that's cheap. You can wait a long time if you're expecting to do that with software, but that's something that happens. They do expect, when I see 10 people coming at me, then I'll get my deal. Gets his deal, then he has to live with the software supplier for the next 10 to 20 years. It's not a happy marriage. Other things that are a problem in the shipping industry is that the amount of time the owner or the top people spend is very little, because they don't understand how to build software. They don't understand how to choose vendors, which is not easy. None of this is easy. They don't understand how the software should be, and they expect the software to work. They don't know how long it's going to last there. Some people say to last 5 years is very different to lasting 10. And lasting 5 years, you may find that for 4 years, you're deploying it, gathering data and getting people to learn it, and training people up. So the 5th year, if you have to change it in 5 years, that's not great. But the other industries work fine like that, because their return on investment on the software is 10%. Ours may be 2%. 3%, it's not 10, because we run ships. The ships are steel and other materials. They are hardware, they're not software. An insurance company deals with numbers, a bank deals with numbers. What they spend to manage those numbers can be much more than what we spend. So justifiably, owners aren't going to pay for the same kind of percentage of gross revenue that a bank or insurance company pays. And so we reach the point where the software has to last much longer than any other industry thinks that the software had to last. So so we're dealing with a backdrop where people produce software for 5 years and it's fine, and we're working with that policy and those thoughts in mind for software that's last 15 years. Many reasons for the 15 years, not just the growth, how much it costs you. It's also the fact that you're going to have to mesh many and integrate many things with it. If your software is obsolete and you have to redo that, that's not a good thing. And you can ask, okay, I'll buy something from somebody that builds everything. Well, any of us 3 here will tell you that somebody that builds everything is going to build anything very well. Last but not least is that there's a huge amount of requirements for software that haven't been met at all. You know, we build software at Ulysses, and we can see that there's huge gaps. We build transactional software, mostly about transactions. Transactions are a small part of shipping. Most of the issues are not transactions. It's what happens when the transaction didn't work so well. What happens if you send the ship to a range that is a delivery range where you can't get a cargo back? What happens if you charter the ship and they end up the berth's too small, or the berth's too new, or there's no experience, or no tugboats? Or what happens if you think your main engine is fine and it isn't, and you're delayed? And what happens after that? There can be huge consequences. So there isn't the concept of what really matters to the owner, which is what risk he's running and what coordination is needed to mitigate the risk. We haven't even touched. Of course, we can get a purchase order in. Of course, we can record a maintenance and record a defect. Or what does a defect mean? What does it mean? There's maybe 1,000 different defects you can have on a main engine. Is that actually, does your system know that? So bottom line is there's a lot to produce. There's you can't buy anything off the shelf, and neither will you be able to buy until a lot of the ground is covered. And even when that happens, the chances that there's convenience and it's well thought out and it's better than you employing a couple of more people is not high until it's very mature. Anyway, that was my bit.
Well, very good. Thank you very much, Dimitri. So we're in the Q&A session now. There's no questions in at the moment, but if anybody wants to put in questions, I don't really know which direction we'll take the discussion in, but maybe David, you've got some thoughts on what you've heard from Dimitri and Giampiero to start off with, do you think?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Gosh, listening to you, Demetrius, I think I want to change my job. Gosh, it sounds really, it really is a difficult market out there. It is a difficult market out there. And I think that some of the problems that you've described is one that I wrote down in particular, where you described someone who has a software installation for 5 years, but actually 4 years of that was an implementation. And to your point, shipping has neither the cash, the scale, or the time to wait for 4 years until you get 1 year of productivity. Other businesses seem to have that appetite, but certainly not shipping. I think that's part of what we were talking about earlier in making these decisions, is understanding what the experience is going to be like. And at some point people are going to have to ask the hard questions and get the answers that they need. Because the other word that you said, Demetrius, which I think is really important, is the idea of how do you manage risk, right? Because there's financial risk, there's data risk, there's reputational risk, there's the risk associated with wasting 4 years, right? The opportunity costs. To finally get a product up and running before you start to see some value. So look, there have been some bad experiences, and as we're in the marketplace, and we've been working with our partner Bureau Veritas over the last year, talking to different customers, and there's a lot of like sort of maritime software therapy sessions that we go through, right? Where people talk about they're committed to something, it doesn't work, or they've tried to do something internally and it gets to a point where they can't support it anymore. But the idea of then, either unwinding that or taking another risk of working with yet another software company is an obstacle that we have to get over. So it's not just what Giampiero said, there's this unrealistic expectations about the actual amount of revenue and the number of companies out there. It's we're dealing with almost these unspoken, pardon me, I'm an American, so I use words like this, these unspoken traumas that people have encountered over the course of their career, and it just makes them cross their arms and say, you know what, I'm going to do what Giampiero says, and I'm just going to wait until there's the 5 companies left standing, and I'm going to go with them. But you're painting a picture that we're all trying to deal with here, and there's a lot there. There's a lot there for sure.
It's a little bit negative so far. Has anybody got any positive stories of shipping companies and software they'd like to? John Piero, you mentioned one before we started. Oh. Got a question popped up. Are you reading that, Christina Blanaro? How can a good vendor deal with the fragmentation caused by the industry itself and the 150 shipping company landscape fragmentation? Well, I'm guessing Christina is.
That's the main topics. First of all, I've been a startup myself. When we started Spectec, we were the only ones. Dimitris has done the same thing, and David the same thing. The problem is when you simply see too many startups. It's a very well-known fact that 95% of all startups they go belly up. And but in shipping, we just can't afford it. And but only in shipping, you have ship managers, shipping companies, ship owners, shipyards, etc., deciding to build their own software. Can you imagine General Motors, the CIO of General Motors, going to the CEO and say, SAP, Oracle, it's all bullshit. We need to build everything ourselves. We're going to build our own cloud, our own solution, our own payroll, our own. Nobody knows cars better than us. So why should we buy from outsiders? Let's spend a couple of trillions and build it our own solution. And I'm going to have it ready in 6 months because we know everything. I don't think it will even be fired. It will be thrown out of the window. So, but in shipping, this happens. Somebody wakes up at shipyard, super mega famous Italian, French shipyard, just to name two of which I know. And they said, hey, we're building ships. But you know what? There is money to be made in software. So let's build software. And so they build the performance solution, they build the plant maintenance solution, and then they sell it. How? They don't have a sales organization. Classification society, same thing. They said, oh, let's do it. This is the way to go. These people are making billions, gazillions money. Then they hire me and they said, is it true that you made gazillion monies? And I said, no. And said, but we are going to make gazillion money because we are much smarter and much better. And then I say, no. And then I'm fired. It's just doesn't make any sense, but it is what it is. It is what is happening. So should I be positive? Well, I mean, I want to be positive. I have beautiful products. My customers are happy, and I have to wait another 30 years before I reach, retirement age.
I think you mentioned a customer before we started with a nice story. I don't know if that's something you can say.
Well, I mean, I can name many customers with phenomenal. One of the best, some of the best companies I've ever worked with. They had a phenomenal approach to software. One of them has been Oddfield. Oddfield, in my opinion, is the best company that I see today. MSC is another one. MSC Cargo and MSC Cruise, their approach to software and software use is almost religious. What does it mean by being religious? It means that they approach it seriously. They want people to use it. They listen to the people who want to use it, and they basically squeeze the supplier to a level of insanity, but they get what they want and they get what they need. Too many companies buy software like they buy spare parts. They put it on the shelves, and then they forget about it. Or the management doesn't do it, or doesn't use it. Or the management wants a report, and for 22 years they get an excuse, oh, the report is not ready, we cannot do it this way. We are using .NET, now it's in Java, we're using Java, now is BlueNet, and oh, we should do this, or the computer, everything and anything. Or they buy hardware. This is another thing that always irks me. They buy hardware, and 10 years later, they've changed software 150 times. They are using now, the software is being used by 500 people compared to the first 5 people. And then they say, oh, the software is shit because it's so slow. And you go back and the hardware is 10 years old, the RAM is 32 gigabytes, and and you have 460, 500 people working with it. And then you tell them and say, have you ever thought about changing the hardware? Oh, it's too costly. When IT, when information technology, when a solution, when a software is seen as a cost and not as an advantage to the company, as not a vital investment, that's already the end of it. And this, I've seen it in 90% of the companies I've been dealing with in my life. Of course, there have been phenomenal companies, and there still are. But can I count a lot of them? Definitely not. Another problem is the total individualization of our industry. So our industry is made by individuals, much more than, for instance, the aeronautical industry. The aeronautical industry, they've joined forces since the very, very beginning. And they created their own software solution. Why can we go from any airline to any place, changing flight and different airlines in different airports for 15 times in a row with one ticket? Because they thought about how to unify the solution. Because they said, we all have a common problem, so let's have a common solution. And the shipping industry thinks we all have a common problem, but my problem is better than yours, and therefore I'll find my own solution because I don't want to share my solution with you because you are my enemy, and I don't want to deal with you. In any case, I don't like you. In Italy, we have 15 ship owners, and we have two ship owning associations.
Is the reason for bad software because it hasn't mattered, but we've got these decarbonisation rules coming in, which are so complicated and so difficult, plus these fuel intensity rules coming in, it's going to be incredibly hard. So companies are going to be forced to take software more seriously now. Is that
the fact that everything that you say is so complicated is stated by startups because they want to sell it at a high price, because it is not complicated. Writing software is complicated because I have to adapt to a lot of different demands. I have to adapt to a company that has an LNG fuel, another one who wants to go to ammonia, another one who is thinking about hydrogen, and another one who already has LNG, and another one who has normal fuel but has the scrubbers. So I have to adapt to a multiple level of situation. And that is what makes our life complicated. And then I have to deal with every type of different notice of entry, notice of arrival, notice of departure, port state control, IMO rules, and so on. That is what makes complicated. It's ourselves, the way we have set up the shipping industry to work is what is making it complicated. Because otherwise, what is shipping doing? Taking goods from A to B.
Oh. There's a question here from AJ Achuthan. So I think LinkedIn says he's from Talani Maritime Institute in Mumbai. He's saying, hearing all of you, don't you think software and IT should be an integral function of a shipping company rather than a plug-in? And if so, how do we get there? Who'd like to answer that one?
I don't know. I'll let him do it for the next 35 years.
Dimitri,
Sounds like Demetrius wants to address this one.
You're on mute.
You're on mute, buddy.
I think that's what we're saying here, that it shouldn't be a plug-in. It's not meant to be a plug-in. It won't plug into where if you don't plug it into the people, they're not going to use it. So there's no question that it's going to succeed as a plug-in. It shouldn't be a plug-in. I think the real solution, you want a happy ending to this discussion, Carl, is first of all, you've got to realize that there is complexity in building software for one reason or another. We could state the reasons and we can iron them out, and people can read them to find out what it is, and then you can navigate the difficult path. Which software company will survive is the one that can always improve. And if they didn't do something very well, if their module for something wasn't great, or they didn't pay attention enough or something, they change it. They don't have, the customer doesn't have to go and rip it out and put something else in. The ripping out and put something else in is unnecessary in software. It always has been. We're not dealing with breeze blocks and the concrete reinforcement that you have to knock down. It's all bits and bytes. You should be able to change everything. The fact that it's not easy to change everything is only because somebody was building software very quickly. First of all, for very good reasons. They were building it quickly because the post office in the UK needed the software within a certain time, and that didn't work out very well. But why should they rip that out? They can fix that. You can fix anything in software. The point is that the people aren't paying attention to fixing everything, and they say, oh, the software's old. What's old about it? It doesn't rust. It doesn't disappear. It's not perishable. It doesn't rot. None of that. It's that somebody isn't paying enough attention to improve it. Simple as that. You should be able to improve it. If you can improve it, whatever software you buy from the worst or the best. Finally, it should converge to a success. So yes, you can have success if you stick at it. Now, Giampiero rightly says you're not going to have a great incentive to stick to it if 150 other companies are doing exactly what you are. Well, sooner or later they won't be doing what you are, because they won't believe in it enough to do it the right way, and they will assume that the sales pitch actually satisfies customers, whereas those that are there for the long run won't assume that. They'll say, this is what we're telling you, let's see if it works and let's make it work. We have customers for 20 years. Most of our customers are 15 to 20 years. That's good, but that doesn't mean that we don't keep having to change the software to satisfy them. We change it every year, a whole raft of changes and a whole raft of new changes, and they haven't even deployed some of the things that we've changed. So the point is here, it has to be able to change. The way people understand software and the problems they've had in the past, they'll find out what those were. It's not going to go, it's not going to take forever. It can't be more than 5 or 10 things. Those 5 or 10 things will be understood, and then people will go on from there.
David?
In terms of, you know, the continuing on with a happier story, right? Like what we've described is somewhat chaotic, right? And there's an idea that in chaos there's opportunity, right? Someone has to solve these issues, and they will get solved. Maybe not as quickly or as cheaply as some people want, but we are working hard to address these issues. And in that process, what Dimitri said is really important around the software itself. If you build software that is meant to do something in 2024 and it is not meant to do something in 2028, well, then you've got a problem as a software company, not only the company who purchased it from you. And so the idea of creating, and this is what we do at Orbit, a platform that is open and it's a little bit more modular and allows us to do what Dimitri said, which is if we need to improve our software, we often will work with partners to help extend what we do and not tell a customer that they need to rip something out, right? That's the worst thing. That's the worst message of all. And so getting back to the earlier discussion about due diligence, you have to ask those questions when you're looking at a vendor. So what happens in 2 years, right? What happens when fuel ETS regulations come in? How does that change your software? Do you have the capabilities to help us with that? What happens if we want to purchase LNG or carriers or buy them or build them? Does your software help us do that? And some software is very narrow and it's meant to solve a very siloed point solution, but other solutions are meant to be more broad. And so you have to ask these questions. And you know, we're having a great time. Like, you know, if I could speak for Orbit, right? We've been doing this for 5 years now, and we've had our ups and downs, but we're finding that in that chaos that everyone's describing, that people are now coming around to the fact that they need to understand software better. They need to pay a little bit more for it. And they also understand that if they don't ask the questions about what's going to happen with the software and their workflow 6 months from now or a year from now, that they will not make the right decisions. So I think that, you know, some of the questions in the chat are in and around that is, you know, to the point that AJ made, to echo what Demetrius said, ships are data producing machines, right? There's data coming from every single part of the vessel. And so if you're not thinking about information technology as a core function of your organization, you're just not thinking about it in the right way. I'm not going to predict what that means, but to gather data and to make to process it and turn it into insights and workflow is what, as Giamparo said, that's the airline industry. What's the airline, right? It's moving people from one place to another. It just happens to be through a different mode, but they've thought through the fact that there's a tremendous amount of information that they need in order to make that be seamless. So, you know, this idea of we're all swimming in this ocean of data. If you don't have a way to capture that, you're going to find yourself at a competitive disadvantage at some point or another. So, but we're having a great time. So I want to paint the picture from my point of view that it's a good story for us so far.
Carl, there are some questions that we need to answer to. There are several ones, and one of them stating, hearing all of you, don't you think software and IT should be an integral function? Sorry, this one we have already replied to, but there was one, does model-based software architecture mitigate the problem of handling the numerous requirements that the software system should satisfy? Could be the way of software architecture and a key factor of choosing the right software. My reply, no, I don't think so, because in any case, a lot of people in shipping don't understand anything about software architecture, including myself. I'm a marine engineer. I don't have any idea how software works. I only want to know how it does things the way, as an engineer, I want them to be done. So, and then I use programmers in order, and system architect and business analysts in order to build up the best software possible. I think that the main issue that we have here is that a lot of CIOs in the maritime industry don't understand the requirements, don't listen to the requirements of their own people, and trying to find maybe solutions their own way, like building their software internally, which is a mistake. And I believe that the solution is look at the skills of the people in the company that you want to buy from. And look, it doesn't matter if they've been in business 3 years. If they already have at least one customer who can say, look, I'm using the software and it does exactly the way I wanted, and allow them to see it. I always beg my customers to say, can you please open your system to my prospects? Because this way I can get more customers. Getting the first one is always the most difficult part. Once you have 10 on board, you have enough demonstration capabilities to say my software works. It is okay. Once you have 100 or 200 ships, it's equivalent to have it 1,000, let's say, in the terms of being able to show off a little bit. What I beg CIOs is not to listen to, or ship owners, not to listen to people going to them and telling them, we can use artificial intelligence to populate your database at a click of the button, and your plane maintenance will be done while you're playing Beethoven.
Very good.
Doesn't work this way.
So question. Oh, Dimitri, sorry.
Yeah, David said something, and then there's a question about it. Modular. If the software isn't modular, you won't be able to change it, and it won't get better. So modular, to the person asking that question, it's yes, you do have to make it modular. You have to make, and the more modular it is, the better it works. Silicon Valley hasn't had the time to build modular software for every domain, because only when it's modular can it be future-proof. Basically, you're just saying that it's building blocks that you rearrange. Building blocks that are rearranged hasn't been a big thing in software development, because if the horizon was 5 years, why do that? It costs you more to build it modular than to build it non-modular and then check it out. But we don't have that choice. And because the way that we use software and the return on investment, and the fact that we have to get people to get used to it, and that there's a high-risk industry, which means you still need people, and dealing with people is much harder than dealing with transactions. You can't automate the decisions people are making, because some of them involve a lot of variables that that the system doesn't know about. They can find out. I'm not saying that it can't, but it takes a huge amount of design and execution. So modular is the buzzword. But it has to last forever, because if it doesn't last forever, every time you come up against the wall, customers have huge problems, and huge problems with systems that need to integrate. They have huge problems with processes that have to change, huge problems with data that they thought they had, they can't find anymore, can't access anymore, and so on. So modular is true, lasting a long time is true. Understanding the design, what kind of design you have to make is the key. A good design will last for a very, very long time. But just let me close. Jean-Pierre could finish this discussion much better, but some companies have bought software companies in the shipping industry and didn't spend any money developing the software. They thought that whatever you had would last and people would pay for it because it did the basic thing and the basic was enough. They never realized that you have to keep making it better. And as a result, they ruined the name of probably the most successful company in software and shipping, Spectec. It was ruined by the concept that the buyer of the company didn't think you needed to spend money on the development. Is that true? Am I getting it wrong, Jean-Pierre?
Okay, well, we've got 5 minutes left. There's a very interesting issue. So AJ he's from Synergistic Solutions, not Talani Maritime Institute, but he's a maritime training in Thane, if it's pronounced right, in India. So when he had a question originally, because he works in competency, so presumably he's attracted to this because we were talking about competency, but we haven't actually talked about individual competency very much, but organizational competency is something different. Now he's raised to one IMO to get a performance standard for software. Perhaps no, David and John Piero to take 2 minutes each to.
No, listen, the IMO to do something, we're going to all be all dead, including anybody who's born today. So it's, and I've been trying to unify, for instance, standardize the way we build databases, following the patterns of the aeronautical industry. And it has, I mean, it's not failed because ShipTex is still alive, but compared to the kind of results that we were expecting and the money and time that we put into it to do it for the benefit of the shipping community. So with zero income for Spectec at that time, myself, of course, and so on, the results are definitely not there. I mean, we're talking about 18 years ago, we started 2006. So you can imagine in 18 years, we have not been able to promote a standardized, free of charge way to create databases the same way, so that, for instance, what Ajay is saying, people can move from one software solution to the other without having to rewrite, databases or remanage them continuously, which, of course, some software vendors are very happy about because it blocks the customer for 20, 25 years. Dimitris was saying, our customers are forever. Once we sell a solution, we know very well that they are forever. And some new buyers of existing companies, they've exploited that advantage enormously, milking the cows until the cows died. But anything that has to do with IMO, I try to involve BIMCO, I try to involve Intertanko and associations and so on to try, at least, for instance, and there have been efforts to unify the new reporting and so on. But shipping is individualistic. 90% of ship owners are private people.
Oh.
And they're all their own assist type.
David, I think you get the last word. I think.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, I agree with not just about shipping and the IMO and BIMCO, just in any industry. If you're waiting for the regulators, you're going to wait way too long. In fact, usually what happens is the regulators follow the industry and the practice that they've put in place. And there are things happening, as was mentioned, whether it's vessel reporting standards or emission standards. That's a different story, and that needs to take on its own momentum. But what I'd say to people, especially ship owners or pool managers or potential software buyers who are on this call, is I think you need to just start. Once you do your due diligence, you need to experiment. You need to learn what works. Make the right choices. Make sure you understand your risk and your reward and what your return is going to be. But if we just wait for the perfect solution, or we wait for the IMO or anyone to tell you this is how it's going to be done, nothing is going to change. So in the context of all of this stuff that we talked about, you have to have a little bit of courage to understand what you want and to go out there once you pick the right software and give it a try. And then hopefully, as Gianpaolo says, you guys, you can adopt it and you can see the value that you need. And you'll find a happier ending than some others have had in the past.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. Okay, well, hopefully we've got some new ideas about what organizational competency means and how to get there, which you can go home with and a lot of other stuff behind. So that's the end of the webinar. So thank you very much, Dimitri, David, and John Piero. And we're back next Thursday with talking about multiple communication services from ship to shore going through the cloud. So hopefully we'll see you then. But thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Oh,
Bye.
yes.
Thank you.